My life used to be peaceful until everything changed in an instant. I had spent years working hard to buy this piece of land, a place to enjoy freedom and privacy. But what I thought would be a tranquil space soon became invaded by things I never could have imagined. Every time the police knocked on my door, I couldn't help but wonder if I had truly done something wrong. It felt as if someone was trying to take away the one thing I held dear. And from there, a battle began, not just over ownership, but over the struggle to preserve the freedom and peace I had longed for. If you're interested in dramatic stories about power, corruption, and the battle to protect the community, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you won't miss any updates. I still remember the first time the police showed up. I thought it was a mistake. Maybe someone had reported the wrong house or made a simple error. It seemed like an isolated incident, but that was just the beginning. The second time they came around, I felt a wave of annoyance wash over me. This time, I knew it wasn't a mistake. Something was going on. But the third time, that's when the realization hit me. Someone was out to get me. Every week, it was the same story. Officers knocking on my door, responding to noise complaints, reports about illegal structures, and even accusations of running an unlicensed business. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? The worst part? I didn't even live in a neighborhood with an HOA. I own my land outright. But that didn't seem to matter to the power-hungry HOA president who had it out for me. The only question was, how far was I willing to go to fight back? Buying my own land had been a dream years in the making. 5 acres, just far enough to get some peace and quiet, yet close enough to town for all the essentials. No neighbors breathing down my neck, no shared walls, and certainly no HOA telling me what I could and couldn't do. It was just me, my land, and my freedom. I had worked tirelessly to make this dream come true. Extra hours, skipping vacations, cutting corners wherever I could. Also, I could afford something that would finally be mine. The moment I found it, a small house with a huge yard and endless possibilities, I jumped on it. I signed the paperwork so fast, my real estate agent couldn't even keep up. The first few days were perfect. I woke up to the sound of birds, not traffic. I drank my coffee on the porch, staring out at endless open space. I finally felt like I could breathe, but it didn't take long for the peace to shatter. I was out back unloading some tools when I heard a car pull up. I assumed it was a delivery or maybe someone lost, looking for directions. But when I walked around the front, I saw it, a white Lexus SUV parked right outside my gate, with a woman standing next to it, staring at my house like she was inspecting it for violations. She looked like she had just stepped out of corporate office. In her 50s, blonde bob, perfectly pressed blouse, khaki slacks, and of course a clipboard. The moment I saw that clipboard, I knew. This wasn't some neighbor just stopping by to say hello. I wiped my hands on my jeans and walked up to the gate, tried to stay calm. "Can I help you?" She flashed me a tight-lipped smile, the kind that was anything but friendly. "You must be the new homeowner." I nodded. "Yeah, that's me." She extended a hand, but it was clear she wasn't thrilled to touch me. "Karen Crawford," she said, "I'm the president of the Sunnyside Homeowners Association. I assume the previous owner told you about the HOA requirements for this neighborhood." I stared at her, confused. "I'm not part of an HOA." Her smile faltered and her eyes narrowed. "Actually, you are. All properties in this area are subject to Sunnyside HOA guidelines. I'm here to make sure you're properly registered and aware of the community rules." I blinked. There must be some mistake. This property isn't in an HOA. The listing said no HOA. She chuckled, but it wasn't a real laugh. It was the kind that people make when they know they've already won. Realtors say a lot of things, but according to our records, your property falls under Sunnyside jurisdiction. That means you'll need to register, pay the monthly dues, and comply with the neighborhood standards. I felt the blood rush to my face. I bought this land outright. I'm not in any HOA. You have no authority here. Her friendly mask dropped instantly, replaced by something colder, more threatening. "I don't think you understand. Every property in this area is expected to maintain certain standards. If you refuse to cooperate, there will be consequences." I laughed bitterly. "Consequences? What? Are you going to fine me for existing?" Her lips curled into a tight smile. "Your property needs to be maintained to the community's expectations. That includes lawn care, proper fencing, approved exterior colors, and compliance with noise ordinances. I took a step closer, my anger rising. I don't answer to your HOA. This is my private property. You have no say in what I do here. Her eyes narrowed, and she stood taller, trying to intimidate me. We'll see about that. Without another word, she turned and walked back to her SUV. I stood there, stunned and furious. What the hell had just happened? Could she really think she could claim my land? I figured it was over. Maybe she'd realize her mistake and move on. I went back to unloading my truck, shaking my head. I was wrong. A few days later, I was sitting on my couch, halfway through a movie, when I saw the flashing red and blue lights through the window. I frowned. I stepped outside to find a police cruiser parked in my driveway. 2 officers stood beside it, looking around as if expecting to find a crime scene. Something wrong, officers? I asked, confused. The older cop, a guy in his late 40s, flipped through his notepad. We got a noise complaint from this address. I blinked. A noise complaint? My property is dead silent. No music, no party, nothing. He didn't look convinced. You the homeowner? I crossed my arms. Yep, and I'm not part of any HOA if that's what this is about. That got their attention. The older cop raised an eyebrow. You've had issues with the HOA? I couldn't help but let out a dry laugh. Their president came by last week, tried to tell me I had to register with them. I told her to get lost. The 2 officers exchanged a glance. Karen Crawford? The younger officer asked. Yeah, I replied. That's the one. The older officer rubbed his forehead. We know her. She calls in complaints for just about anything. This isn't the first time we've been sent out to deal with one of her reports. I shook my head. So what happens now? The older cop glanced around at my silent house. Nothing. We're not hearing any noise. Just letting you know we got the call. Try to have a good night. I watched them walk back to the car, shaking my head in disbelief. This was ridiculous. But I told myself it was just one time. I should have known better. Sure enough, the next week, another cop car showed up. Different officers this time, but the same tired expressions. Sir, we got a report about an unpermitted structure on this property. I stared at them, dumbfounded. What are you talking about? The officer sighed. The HOA says you have an illegal fence and a hazardous shed that violates safety codes. I almost laughed in disbelief. You've got to be kidding me. They weren't. I waved them over to my tool shed, a regular pre-assembled structure I'd put together myself. It was perfectly legal. The officers looked it over. One of them sighed. Yeah, this isn't a violation. I crossed my arms. So what now? The officer shrugged. We'll log it as unfounded, but she'll probably call again. And sure enough, she did. Week after week, there were complaints, my yard being a fire hazard, an unlicensed business operation, a non-permitted structure. The harassment didn't stop. Karen was relentless, determined to make my life a nightmare. By the 5th time a cop showed up, Officer Lee, who I come to know all too well, barely even went through the motions. Jesus Christ, it's you again, he muttered. I throw my hands. You tell me, man. I didn't call you. Lee rubbed his face in frustration. We're getting tired of this too. But we have to respond. What do I do? I asked, my patience wearing thin. He hesitated, then spoke quietly. You might want to start documenting everything. This lady is going to keep going after you. I knew he was right. Karen wasn't going to stop. She wanted me gone, and I was about to find out just how far she was willing to go to make that happen. At first, I thought the police visits were the worst of it. Maybe she'd get bored. Maybe she'd move on. But no, Karen was just getting started. One morning, I stepped outside to find a bright orange notice stuck to my fence. It was a violation notice for failure to maintain my lawn. I stared at it in disbelief. My grass wasn't overgrown. I had 5 acres of land, and sure, it wasn't a perfectly manicured golf course, but it was far from a jungle. I ripped the notice off, crumpled it in my hand, and tossed it aside. HOA notices meant nothing to me. They had no jurisdiction over my land. The next day, another notice. This time for an unauthorized fence. $500. I ran my hand over my face, trying to keep my cool. My fence had been here long, before I even moved in. It wasn't unauthorized, it was mine. But Karen wasn't done yet. Then came the certified letter. I opened it, expecting more HOA nonsense, but instead, I found a formal complaint filed with the city. The charges were absurd. Property risk of pest infestation, illegal business operations, unlicensed auto repair shop, non-permitted structures, potential safety hazards. I was livid. Illegal business? What the hell? All I did was change my own oil in my garage. I wasn't running some backyard mechanic shop. I called the city zoning office. They said I could file an appeal, but an inspector would have to come out first. I knew this was Karen's doing, and I knew she wouldn't stop until I was gone. The next weekend, I woke up to something worse. My mailbox was ripped out of the ground, bent and broken, thrown halfway across my driveway. I just stood there, staring at it. This wasn't an accident. It was a message. I grabbed my phone and called the police. Officer Lee showed up fast. "Damn," he muttered, inspecting the damage. "You piss off the wrong people." I knew exactly who had done it. He inspected the damage and said, "Unless you have cameras pointing at it, there's not much we can do." "So, she gets away with it?" I asked. Lee met my eyes. Not forever. I wasn't going to let Karen get away with this. She had escalated from harassment to outright sabotage, and now I was ready to turn the tables. I knew at that point that I couldn't just sit around and let Karen keep getting away with it. She wasn't just harassing me anymore. She was trying to break me. But she didn't realize one thing. I wasn't going to back down. The first thing I did was install security cameras. I placed them at the front gate, along the driveway, near the mailbox, around my garage, and along the entire perimeter of my land. If anyone set foot on my property, I'd know, and I'd have proof. But I didn't stop there. I put up no trespassing signs, big, bold, and impossible to miss. Not that I thought Karen would care, but if she or one of her little HOA minions decided to trespass again, there would be no denying it. Then I began documenting everything. Every time the cops showed up, every time I got one of those bogus HOA notices slapped on my fence, every fake violation, every conversation I had with Officer Lee. I even started keeping a file with timestamps, photos, saved emails, and printed letters. I was building a case, and I knew it was only a matter of time before I would have enough to take legal action. Karen wasn't going to bully me into submission. If she thought I was some easy target, she was in for a rude awakening. After months of fighting back, I finally had enough evidence to turn the tables. One night, I was sitting at my desk, flipping through the pile of HOA notices I had collected like some twisted scrapbook of harassment, when I had a thought. I had been so focused on proving I wasn't part of the HOA that I hadn't realized I could use their own rules against them. I dug into the Sunnyside HOA bylaws, and after some digging, I found it a loophole. The bylaws stated that the HOA could only enforce its rules on properties with signed membership agreements. I had never signed one. The previous owner hadn't signed one. That meant every single notice, every complaint, every fine they had slapped on me was completely illegal. A smirk crept across my face. Karen had been playing dirty, thinking I was going to fold, but she forgot one important thing I could read too. It was time to fight back. The next morning, I called the first real estate attorney I could find. His name was Jerry Porter, and he sounded half asleep when he answered the phone. "Porter Law, Jerry speaking," he mumbled. I explained my situation, the harassment from Karen, the bogus violations, the fake complaints to the city. By the time I finished, there was silence on the other end. Then, Jerry burst out laughing. "Holy hell," he wheezed. "She's going after you like it's a damn mob shakedown." I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. It's not so funny when you're the one living it. He cleared his throat and grew more serious. "Good news. You got a case. A rock-solid one. You're not in the HOA. You have no contract with them. Every fine they've issued, every complaint they've filed, it's all illegal. And if they reported false information to the city, that's fraud." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Finally, someone who could see the truth. Karen had underestimated me, but I was about to flip the script. I wasn't going to sit back and wait for Karen to try to bury me with more lies. I was going to make sure everyone knew what she was doing. I gathered all my evidence. The security footage, the fake violation notices, the police reports, everything, and sent it to the local news. At first, I wasn't sure they'd bite. But then I got a call from an investigative journalist, Melissa Carter. Her voice practically crackled with excitement. "Let me get this straight," she said. You're being harassed by an HOA that you're not even part of? Yep, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She laughed. Oh, this is good. Within 2 days, they were planning a full-blown news segment on my case. They aired the story, and it was glorious. The footage showed Karen marching onto my land, clipboard in hand, acting like she had any authority. They played the video of her tearing down my no trespassing signs and the police officer shaking his head, saying, "Yeah, we get calls from this HOA all the time. It's getting ridiculous." The story went viral. People were furious, and the HOA board was in full panic mode. The news segment didn't just go viral. It led to an official investigation into the Sunnyside HOA's practices. And that's when things took a turn. Turns out, Karen had been filing false violations, not just against me, but against other homeowners too. She had submitted fraudulent complaints to the city, trying to get properties condemned so she could force people to sell. That was illegal. And just like that, Karen wasn't the powerful HOA president anymore. She was the villain in a public scandal. The city launched a full investigation into the HOA, and what they found was shocking. Karen had been abusing her position for months, filing fake complaints, making threats, and trying to force people out of their homes. It wasn't just harassment, it was outright fraud. With the investigation underway, I didn't stop. I filed my own lawsuit for harassment and defamation. I had all the evidence I needed, security footage, police reports, news stories, and even the HOA's own fraudulent records. My lawyer, Jerry, was practically drooling when I handed him the evidence. "Oh yeah," he said, flipping through the pages. "This is going to be fun." But things got even better. Not long after I filed my lawsuit, Karen got a visit from the police. This time, they weren't showing up because she called them. They were there for her. I watched from my porch as 2 officers, including Officer Lee, walked up to Karen's door. She opened it, her usual self-righteous smirk on her face. But when Lee pulled out a formal trespassing warning and told her, "If you step onto his property again, you'll be arrested," her face went pale. Karen's reign of terror was over. She fought it, of course. She screamed. She threatened lawsuits. She tried to claim that she was being treated unfairly. But no one cared anymore. The city had already started their investigation, and when the findings came out, it was the final blow for Karen. She was slapped with a personal fine, a $10,000 fine, for misusing public resources. Apparently, filing dozens of false police reports and bogus city complaints wasn't just HOA business. It was abuse of city services. But that wasn't all. The HOA board, who had once blindly followed Karen's every order, turned on her. When Karen lost all her power, they held an emergency vote, and the result was unanimous. Karen was officially removed as president. She tried to fight it, of course. She screamed, threatened lawsuits, and tried to spin the narrative. But it didn't matter. Her reign was over. She had lost. And just when I thought it couldn't get any better, it did. A few months later, I saw it. The for sale sign in her yard. Karen had done the one thing she could do. She sold her house and moved away. I'll be honest, watching that sign go up was one of the most satisfying moments of my life. She was gone. And my land? It was mine again. For the first time in months, I stepped outside without the fear of finding another fake violation notice or hearing the knock of another cop on my door. There was no more Karen. No more HOA harassment. It was over. But the story didn't end there. A week after Karen left, I got a knock on my door. I opened it, expecting more trouble. But instead, I saw a nervous-looking man in a suit. Hi, he said awkwardly. "I'm Tyler Carter, the new HOA president of Sunnyside." I crossed my arms. "Yeah. Well," Todd cleared his throat. "We just wanted to come by and apologize for everything. We kind of let Karen go unchecked for a long time, but after everything that happened, the fines, the lawsuit, the police reports, we had a board meeting, and we all agreed that we, don't actually have any claim over your land." I smirked. "You don't say." He nodded quickly. "Right. We, formally acknowledge that Sunnyside HOA has no legal authority over your property. And I just wanted to say, you won't hear from us again." I bit back a laugh. After all that, now they were playing nice? I didn't trust them for a second. I looked him dead in the eye. "If you or anyone else from your HOA ever bothers me again, I'll have you on camera. I'm not afraid to fight back. Todd swallowed hard. Yeah, no problem. Enjoy your land, sir. And just like that, the HOA was done with me. And the police? They stopped coming too. Finally, peace. No more fake complaints. No more unpermitted structure claims. No more city inspectors. It was quiet again. I decided to celebrate. I spent the next week fixing up my land, cleaning up the mess from months of harassment, repainting my fence, planting a few new trees. I even put up a brand new sign, no trespassing. HOA not welcome. Then I threw a massive barbecue. I invited every neighbor in the area. People brought beer, grilled steaks, played music, laughed, and just enjoyed themselves. And as I sat on my porch sipping an ice-cold drink, watching people play cornhole in my yard, I smiled. Because for the first time in a long while, my land was truly 100% mine. And no clipboard-wielding tyrant would ever take it from me again. After Karen was gone and the dust had settled, I finally felt like I could breathe again. I had fought for my land, my peace of mind, and my freedom, and I had won. There was no more fear of someone knocking on my door in the middle of the night. No more wondering if today would be the day I found another violation notice plastered on my fence. The days that followed were a true sense of relief. I spent my mornings drinking coffee on the porch, watching the sun rise over my 5 acres of land. I worked on my truck without worrying about a complaint being filed. I cleaned up the property not because someone demanded it, but because it felt good to do it on my own terms. The place I had dreamed about for so long was finally mine, not just in name, but in spirit. Karen may have thought she could wear me down, but instead, she made me stronger. The battle had been exhausting, sure, but had taught me something crucial. The power that people like Karen have comes not from authority or legal loopholes, but from the fear they can instill. Once you stop fearing them, once you stand your ground, their power crumbles. If there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's that you should never back down in the face of injustice. Whether it's a corrupt HOA president, an overreaching authority, or anyone trying to bully you into submission, don't let them win. It doesn't matter how big they are, how powerful they seem, or how many people are on their side. If you're on the right side of things, you have the truth, and that is the most powerful weapon of all. There were times, especially during the worst moments, when I wanted to just pack up and walk away. It would have been easy to let Karen win, but I realized that if I gave up, if I let her push me out of my own home, then I would have let her win. And that's a loss I wasn't willing to accept. So I fought back. Not because I wanted to be some hero or because I needed a victory, but because my life, my peace, and my home were worth fighting for. And in the end, that's all any of us have. The right to live our lives on our own terms, without fear, without harassment, and without anyone else thinking they have the right to dictate what we do. Now, every time I step outside, there's a sense of pride that fills me. I look around my property, my land, and I see more than just 5 acres. I see the culmination of years of hard work, sacrifice, and, most importantly, resilience. I think about how close I came to losing it all to someone who thought she could dictate my life. But I didn't lose. And every time I walk past my fence, past my trees, or over the land I've worked so hard to make my own, I'm reminded that no one can take that away from me. And when I look at my land now, I don't just see dirt and grass. I see a symbol of freedom, of a hard-won victory. I smile to myself because I know this land will remain mine, and no matter what happens, no one can ever take it from me again. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this story, it's this. Never let anyone tell you what you can and can't do with your life. You have the right to live how you want, on your terms, and without interference. Whether it's an HOA president or anyone else trying to make your life miserable, remember that you have the power to fight back. You don't need to fight with anger or hatred. Fight with the truth, fight with your resilience, and fight with the knowledge that you deserve to live in peace. Karen may have thought she was the powerful one, but in the end, she was nothing more than a bully who was exposed for who she really was. And I'll tell you this, there's nothing more powerful than standing up to a bully and showing them that their power has no place in your life. So stand up, fight for what's right, and never let anyone take away what's yours. Because in the end, it's not just about the land. It's about your life. And that's something worth protecting. Now, with everything behind me, I'm free to live my life as I choose. I put up the no trespassing sign, not because I'm worried about anyone coming onto my land, but as a reminder to myself that this is my space, my sanctuary, and no one can take that from me. As I finish up my barbecue and look around at the people I invited over, all of them enjoying the space I've worked so hard to protect, I realize that this battle wasn't just about me. It was about standing up for everyone who's ever felt powerless, everyone who's ever been bullied or harassed. It was a reminder that no one has the right to take what's yours, not your land, your peace, or your freedom. So here I am, sitting on my porch, watching the sunset over my property. I take a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything I've been through. And I smile, because I know one thing for sure. This is my land. And no HOA, no Karen, and no one else is ever going to take that from me. Now that the dust has settled and Karen is long gone, I find myself reflecting on everything that happened. I think about the way things could have gone differently. How close I came to walking away, giving up, and letting this woman dictate my life. It's strange to think back on it all now, but I know one thing for sure. I'm better for having fought this battle. It wasn't just a fight for my property, it was a fight for my peace of mind, my dignity, and my right to live life without someone hovering over me, telling me what I can and can't do. This experience has taught me that people like Karen are dangerous not because they have power, but because they believe they can bend others to their will. They thrive on fear, on making you feel small, but it's only when you stand your ground that they lose their grip. And that's the real lesson here. When you stand up to those who try to make you feel small, you start to realize that the world isn't nearly as intimidating as it may seem. You can be the one who stands tall. And it doesn't have to be some grand, heroic stand. It could be as simple as saying no when someone tries to impose their will on you. I'm not going to lie and say it was easy. There were nights when I lay awake, wondering if Karen would ever stop. There were days when I questioned if I should just cut my losses and move on. But then I would remind myself of the work I had put into making this land mine. I reminded myself that this was my dream, something I had fought for, something I had earned. I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. Not Karen, not anyone. The real power in resilience isn't in the moment of victory, but in the decision to keep going even when you're not sure how it will end. It's about pushing forward, even when the future looks uncertain, and trusting that your effort will matter in the end. And it did. Every time the police came, every time Karen tried to tear me down, I stood my ground. And in the end, it wasn't just about winning a fight. It was about reclaiming my peace and my sense of self. When Karen sold her house and moved away, something shifted within me. I realized that I'd been holding on to so much fear and anger for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to be free. Free from the stress of wondering when the next complaint would come. Free from the constant anxiety of being harassed. Free from someone else's power. It was a relief to see her go, but more than that, it was a reminder that we can always move forward. We can always let go of the past, even the parts that seem to haunt us. Yes, Karen had caused me a great deal of pain, but in the end, I was able to take back my life. I could leave the past behind, knowing that it no longer had control over me. The peace that followed Karen's departure wasn't just the absence of complaints or harassment. It was the quiet that came from knowing I had done everything in my power to protect what was mine. It was the sound of birds in the morning and the rustling of trees in the evening. It was walking outside and feeling the air untainted by the tension and anxiety that had gripped me for so long. I finally realized that this land was more than just a place to live. It was a symbol of my strength, my ability to persevere, and my refusal to let anyone else dictate my life. The land I bought was not just land. It was a declaration of independence, a statement that I would not be controlled. Now, as I sit on my porch, sipping coffee in the morning and watching the world go by, I understand what it means to truly be free. I know that no matter what challenges come my way in the future, I will be ready. Because I've already won. I've already proven that I won't back down. So, if there's one thing I want you to take away from this story, it's this. Don't let anyone tell you that you don't have the right to live your life the way you want to. Don't let anyone, whether it's an HOA, a bully, or anyone else think they have the right to control you. Your land, your life, your peace of mind, they are all yours to protect. When someone comes at you, trying to tear you down, trying to make you feel like you don't have a right to exist as you are, remember this. You are stronger than they think. You have the power to fight back, and you have the right to stand your ground. It may take time. It may take patience. But in the end, it will be worth it. Because when you stand up for yourself, when you fight for what's yours, you don't just protect your property. You protect your soul, your peace, and your future. And that's a battle worth fighting. And as for Karen, well, I don't have to worry about her anymore. The land is mine, and no one, not her, not anyone, can ever take that from me. The past few months have taught me more than I ever could have imagined. As I reflect on what I've been through, I realize that this wasn't just about me protecting my land. It was about protecting my life, my sanity, and my future. It's easy to take things like peace, freedom, and autonomy for granted, especially when you've never had anyone try to take them from you. But when someone pushes, pressures, and harasses you, when they try to strip you of your security, it changes you. You start to see things differently. You start to recognize the strength you never knew you had, and you realize that no matter how hard the struggle, you can come out on top. That's the legacy of everything I've been through. It's not just the land I've fought for. It's the belief in myself, the belief that I can overcome whatever comes my way. Karen may have thought she was powerful, but it was my strength and resilience that ultimately prevailed. And that's something no one can ever take away from me. Today, I walk around my property with a sense of pride and gratitude that I never had before. I used to be consumed with worry, anxiety, and the constant fear of what might come next. But now, I live without that weight on my shoulders. Every time I pass the mailbox, the fence, or the edge of the land where I once felt like a prisoner, I'm reminded of how far I've come. The quiet I now enjoy isn't just a lack of complaints or noise. It's the peace that comes from knowing that my life is finally my own again. I don't have to look over my shoulder anymore. I don't have to wonder when the next violation notice will come in the mail. What I have now is my life, my land, and a deep sense of relief. I'm no longer shackled by someone else's petty desires for control. Instead, I'm living the way I've always wanted to on my terms. Even though Karen is gone, I can't help but recognize how much of my own energy I had poured into the fear she instilled in me. It took a long time for me to realize that the damage she had caused was only temporary. She was the one who had caused the storm, but I had the power to weather it and move on. Now it's not just about the land anymore. It's about the lessons I've learned about myself, about resilience, about fighting for what's right. I used to worry that I wouldn't be able to handle situations like this. But now, I understand that no matter what life throws at me, I have the strength to push back. I've let go of the anger and the frustration that haunted me for so long. I've stopped obsessing over the past and the injustice that came with it. It's hard to admit, but the truth is, sometimes the greatest battle is not the one fought against others, but the one you have to fight with yourself. The battle to overcome your own doubts, fears, and insecurities. And once you win that fight, nothing in the world can stop you. With Karen out of the picture, a new chapter has begun. One where I am free to enjoy the life I've built for myself without constant fear of harassment. The future looks bright. I've learned that challenges are inevitable, but they don't define me. They refine me. As I look to the future, I feel a renewed sense of purpose. I know now that the choices I make, the boundaries I set, and the fights I choose to take on will be my own. I will never again allow someone to step into my life and try to impose their will on me. This is my journey, my path to walk, and I'll walk it with confidence. Whether it's with the property or with anything else in life, I'm ready for what's to come. I've learned that it's not the battles we fight that define us, but the strength we find within ourselves to keep moving forward, no matter how many times we're knocked down. As I sit on the porch, watching the sunset over my land, I know that this story isn't just about one person's struggle against a power-hungry HOA president. It's about something much deeper, the right to live freely, to stand up for yourself, and to protect what is yours. And what's mine is mine, Not just my land, but my peace, my right to live without fear or harassment. No one could take that away from me. If there's one thing you should take away from this story, it's this. Never let anyone take what's yours, whether it's your property, your freedom, or your peace of mind. Fight for it. Stand your ground. Because once you do, no one can push you around. No matter how powerful they seem, no matter how many obstacles they throw in your way, you have the power to protect what's yours. And if you fight with resilience, with truth, and with determination, you'll find that nothing can stand in your way. As the days turned into weeks and the reality of living freely started to sink in, I began to notice something unexpected, the support I had from the local community. While I had spent so much time focusing on Karen and her tactics, I hadn't realized how many people had been quietly watching the situation unfold. Neighbors, former homeowners, even strangers who had experienced similar things. They all reached out, showing their support and sharing their own stories of dealing with overbearing HOAs. It was humbling, to say the least. It made me realize that, although Karen had tried to break me, she had also inadvertently brought the community closer. I wasn't alone in this fight. There were people who understood what it was like to feel powerless, to have your life controlled by rules and regulations that didn't apply to you. And they too had fought back. As word spread about my victory, others began to feel empowered to stand up for themselves too. It was like a ripple effect. People who had been afraid of speaking out against the HOA were now finding the courage to do so. Some even started organizing meetings to discuss how to protect their own land from unjust rules, and others who had faced similar harassment from Karen started sharing their stories. In a strange way, Karen had become a catalyst for change, not just for me, but for the whole community. Her actions had exposed a larger issue, the unchecked power of HOA presidents like her and the negative impact they could have on homeowners. Her defeat didn't just end my personal battle, it sparked a movement. As I continue to reflect on everything that's happened, I realize that the biggest lesson I've learned is that we must never stop fighting for our rights. This experience taught me that no matter how big or small the fight may seem, you have to stand up for what's right. Whether it's something as personal as the land you own or something as broad as your right to live peacefully without constant interference, you must hold your ground. It's easy to get discouraged. It's easy to think that you're fighting a battle you can't win, especially when you feel like you're up against forces bigger than you. But that's the thing about standing up for what's right. It doesn't always look like an immediate victory. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it takes patience. But if you're in the right, eventually the truth will win. I'm not just talking about dealing with an HOA or a bully. I'm talking about all the small battles we face in life. The ones where we feel like no one's on our side or that our voice doesn't matter. But it does. And every time you push back, every time you choose to fight, you make a difference. Not just for yourself, but for those who might be watching, learning from your example, and finding the courage to fight their own battles. Now that Karen is gone and the battles are behind me, I can truly say I'm living on my own terms. And that's the ultimate freedom. It's the freedom that comes with knowing that you're not beholden to anyone else's rules. It's the freedom to make decisions that benefit you in your life without fear of someone trying to control you. Every day, I wake up and feel a sense of pride in knowing that this land is mine, not just in a legal sense, but in every sense that matters. It's mine because I fought for it, because I earned it, and because I refused to let anyone take it away from me. And now, I get to enjoy it without fear, without regret, and with a deeper appreciation for the freedom I now have. But I'm not stopping here. This chapter, this battle, it's over, but that doesn't mean I'm done. The land I fought for is just the beginning. The lessons I learned from standing up to Karen, from standing up for my rights, have made me stronger, and now I'm thinking about the future. I've set new goals for myself, projects I've always wanted to take on, but never had the time for, passions I put on the back burner because I was too busy dealing with stress and harassment. But now I have a space to grow. I have the time to focus on what matters most to me. My property is more than just a place to live. It's a symbol of everything I've fought for, everything I'm capable of. And I'm not done yet. I'm building my dreams on solid ground, ground that was fought for, that was earned, and that will always belong to me. And I can't wait to see where this journey takes me next. Looking back, I can honestly say that the fight was worth it. Not just for the land, but for everything it taught me about resilience, strength, and the importance of standing up for what's right. I may have been harassed, I may have been tested, but in the end I came out on top. And that's a victory no one can take from me. Karen's reign of terror is over, and the HOA's grip on my life is gone. But more importantly, I've reclaimed my peace of mind. I've reclaimed my freedom. And that's something I'll never take for granted again. So, if you're facing a similar battle, whether it's with an HOA, a person in power, or just life itself, remember this. You have the strength to fight back. You have the ability to stand your ground, to defend what's yours, and to come out victorious on the other side. Don't let anyone take what's rightfully yours. Stand tall. Fight back. And remember that, in the end, the fight is always worth it. Now that the storm has passed and my life has returned to a normal pace, I find myself appreciating the small things even more. There's no longer a constant cloud of anxiety hanging over my head, and for the first time in what feels like forever, I can truly enjoy my space. My land. I wake up in the morning, take a deep breath of fresh air, and step outside to feel the cool morning breeze. The sounds of the birds singing, the rustling of the trees, and the soft crunch of leaves beneath my feet are all reminders that the battle I fought was worth it. Peace and quiet have become a luxury, but now, it's one that I get to enjoy every single day. I find that I'm also more focused now. I no longer spend hours stressing about what the HOA president might do next or worrying about the next absurd complaint. That mental energy has been freed up to focus on the things that matter. The projects I've always wanted to tackle, the dreams I've always wanted to pursue. I'm finally at a place where I can move forward, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally too. And that's a victory that's even more meaningful than the one I won with Karen. Sometimes, when we're in the middle of a difficult situation, it can feel like it will never end. Like the weight will never lift, and we'll never escape the constant pressure of dealing with someone who's tried to push us down. I remember those feelings clearly, those moments of doubt when I thought that maybe I wasn't strong enough to keep going. But what I've learned is that it's exactly those moments of struggle that build our strength. Every time Karen tried to intimidate me, every time she filed another false complaint or showed up at my door with another violation notice, I was tested. And with each test, I grew stronger. Adversity isn't just something we survive. It's something we grow from. It's how we learn about ourselves, how we find out what we're truly capable of. Had I not gone through this experience, I wouldn't have discovered just how far I'm willing to go to protect what's mine. I wouldn't have realized that, deep down, I'm capable of handling much more than I ever gave myself credit for. Now, I approach life's challenges with a different mindset. I don't fear them like I used to. I know that I'm capable of handling whatever comes my way because I've been through the worst, and I came out stronger for it. One of the most profound things I've realized is that this victory wasn't just about protecting my property. It was about building a legacy of standing up for myself and for what matters most. A legacy of fighting for my peace, my freedom, and my right to live life on my own terms. I hope that years from now, when I look back on this time, I'll remember the fight not just as a battle against one individual, but as a pivotal moment in my life. A moment where I stood tall, when I refused to back down, and when I made it clear that no one, not Karen, not anyone, could take away what was mine. It's not just about the land I fought for. It's about the mindset, the belief that I can protect what I've built. It's about showing future generations that standing up for yourself, even in the face of adversity, is the right thing to do. Because when you fight for what's yours, you're not just fighting for yourself. You're setting an example for others to follow. You're passing on the belief that no matter what, we have the power to protect our rights and our peace. As I sit on my porch, looking out over the land I fought so hard to protect, I know that this experience has changed me. It's changed the way I see myself, the way I approach challenges, and the way I handle difficult people. But more than that, it's taught me the importance of standing strong. Not just for my own sake, but for the sake of everyone who has ever felt like they didn't have a voice. like they didn't have the power to stand up for themselves. When we fight for what's right, when we stand up for ourselves and our land, we send a message that no one can ignore. We show that we won't be bullied or intimidated into submission, that we have the strength to protect what's ours and the courage to keep moving forward, no matter how hard the road may seem. So, my advice to you is this: don't let anyone or anything take away what's yours. Stand tall, fight back, and know that, in the end, it'll be worth it. Because when you stand your ground, when you protect what matters most, there's nothing more powerful than that. And just like I did, you can walk away from the fight knowing that you've won, because no matter how it started, you finished strong. And that's a victory no one can ever take away from you.